Lauren Joffe, and welcome to another episode of Derech Eretz. The concept of building futures for those around you takes time, effort, and community. The Shalom Youth Village in Rwanda touches on this, and then we explore locally in the Eastern Cape with organization Ripples for Change. First, Rabbi Kievman tells us more.
We are building the future together. And building the future starts now in the present. The Talmud says, Ha'avar ayin, yesterday is gone. Yesterday's history. Ha'atid adayin, the future is a mystery. But ha'hove keheref ayin, this moment flies by with a blink of an eye. Whereas my mother of blessed memory would tell me, today is a gift of God, and that's why it's called the present. And so, the present is the beginning of our future. Every moment that we have is precious, and we have to utilize it to the best of our ability. In Jewish history, we could look back at times of decimation, of destruction, times when our people were nearly annihilated and exterminated. Think of the Holocaust. Think of other genocides that occurred to our own people. Yet, after the Holocaust, the Jewish people built the land of Israel. Instead of lamenting and crying, we built our future. There's a very famous Talmudic story about some great sages who were walking on the Temple Mount after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem nearly 2,000 years ago. And when the sages saw the ruins of the ancient temple, they burst into tears crying. One of the great sages with them was Rabbi Akiva, and he burst out laughing. And his colleagues turned to him and asked, "Why are you laughing?" Of course, he asked them, "Why are you crying?" And they explained, "What should we do when we see our destruction?" And he said, "That's precisely why I'm laughing." And he quoted a particular prophecy that talked about a great future and included the destruction, the decimation of our people. But he said, now that the negative has occurred, I know the positive will as well. And therefore, I'm laughing. He also realized that in order to have a brighter future, we have to inject hope into our people. If I'm going to be melancholy, morose, lugubrious, and downtrodden, what kind of hope? How can I uplift the people in that way? Some of the greatest sages, scholars, and leaders of our generation realized the very same. And they said, instead of crying about our tragic past, let us build a brighter and a greater future. Whenever sad things happen, it's true. We cry, we lament. Our staffs go at half-mast. But imagine if you were to see the flags of the other people's homes and know what's going on inside and people's challenges and struggles and difficulties, then we could be a little bit more caring and sensitive and compassionate. That is what we need in order to inject hope in others by showing that sensitivity, the care and the concern. Because perhaps we can quote a verse from the Torah in the story of the Exodus when Moses complains to Almighty God and says, the people, they are going through this unbearable hurt. They're being burdened with the building of the pyramids and the cities in Egypt. And God says, V'gam ani shamati, I also heard their outcry. What does it mean, God also heard their outcry? And God is saying, because you, the people, hear each other's cries, because you are concerned for one another, that's why I'm concerned too. We can evoke God's compassion by us being caring for others. That's how we inject hope. We don't say, I have my own problems, my own troubles, I can't care about others. So we have to inject hope into others in order to build the communities without compromise on the truth. As they say, plant truth and grow trust.
The Agahozo Shalom Youth Village based in Rwanda is truly unlike any other. Today we find out exactly what makes them so special, what is a youth village all about, and why they are so needed.
The youth village model was developed in Israel after the Holocaust to raise orphans of the Holocaust, to give them a secure family and a future. And that model was adapted to fit the Rwandan context. So that's where the shalom comes from. Agahozo is Kinyarwanda, the language of Rwanda, and it means a place where tears are dried. The idea being that in this village, children would be able to find peace and welcome, as exemplified by shalom, and healing of their trauma, as exemplified by Agahozo. I like to think of a youth village as close as an institution can get to being a family, right? Every kid deserves love, they deserve security, they deserve an intact family, and not every child has an intact family and an intact community. So a youth village steps in when one of those two foundational pieces, a family or a community, is fractured. Our youth village offers a really top-notch education. It offers health and wellness services, both for the body and the mind. It offers extracurriculars because a child with a passion is a child who is more tied to life and believes they have something to offer the world. And it offers the love of a family. The idea is that every kid who comes into Agahozo Shalom finds a family unit. They're given a village family led by a family mama, most of whom lost at least their husbands, but many of them also children during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And so these women are called mamas, and they're given a way to be a mama again and give back to their nation and be part of this next generation of Rwanda. And so the kids find a mama, and they find brothers and sisters, as well as cousins, aunts and uncles, and a structure that's really meant to say to them, you are deserving of love, you are deserving of a bright future, you have something to bring to the world. The youth village was started by a South African Jewish woman who was living in America named Anne Heyman. And Anne had heard from a Rwandan that the greatest challenge facing Rwanda was an orphan crisis. There was a significant orphan crisis in the early 2000s. And Anne recognized that there was an established model that could help deal with this crisis, which was the Israeli youth village model. And she worked together with Israelis and with Rwandans over the span of 2 years to raise the money and build this village.
Anne Heyman was involved in every detail of the village, from the strategy to raising the funds, to the architectural designs, to taking the architects to Israel, to showing them what a youth village is. You see, when you look at the village from the air, you're looking at everything is into circles. You're looking at the colors. You're looking at the greenery around it. Everything was intentional, and Anne did such a remarkable job at it. And she was great at macro level, and she was also very detailed as a person.
Now, you can't just take a solution from one country and lay it over another community and their culture, but this was actually a wonderful, fitting solution for Rwanda, because Rwanda has a deep belief in community service and in essentially self-reliance, right? In the community coming together to support members of the community who need that support. That value is called ubudehi. And it really matches up beautifully with Tikkun Olam. So the village had legs in Rwandan culture. And Rwanda also already has this long tradition of aunts and uncles stepping in to raise children when the children lose their parents. So the idea of a family mama of this family that isn't necessarily an original biological family also already existed. As Jews, we're taught that you don't just live for yourself, you live for your community. That your responsibility is not just to yourself and your family, but it's to the community. As Jews, we can't live in many ways without a community, right? If you keep kosher, you need enough of a community around to be able to keep up the laws of kashrut. When you pray, you need a minyan. So much that's done in Jewish life is communally based. And in fact, community and continuity are in many ways the most important things in Jewish tradition. And I think that really resonates in Rwanda, where your responsibility is to your community, your responsibility is to your nation and moving it forward. And it really resonates in the village because you can't survive on your own anywhere. And especially with a child, children need love, they need support. And for many families, especially many traumatized families or families dealing with intergenerational trauma, you need to be able to rely on individuals outside of your family to ensure your family's survival and health. And I think that this is something so many of us have seen during the pandemic, right? That if we're lucky enough to live with other people, our immediate family, our immediate bonds simply aren't enough to sustain us. And for our kids in the village, it's where, community is where they learn how to exist in the wider world. It's where they learn their skills of negotiation and debate, how to exist in a classroom. These are all community aspects, and they're how kids learn how to be.
We create an environment, a safe and loving environment for a young person to heal and to thrive. And that is what we do. That is our business. We are in the business of transforming lives.
ASYV is very much based on Jewish values. Our theory of change is essentially tikkun halev, healing the heart, to tikkun olam, healing the world. The idea that when you help the children find healing, they will then go on to heal the world. It's hilarious. You walk into the village and the kids will say to you, "Oh, are you Jewish? Do you know tikkun olam?" You're like, "Do you know tikkun olam? What's happening here?"
One of the things we do here in Rwanda, every month we have community service. From the time you're 5-year-old to 95, they stop to do service work in their neighborhood. And then they meet and they talk about how do we make our community better. I like to say that Agahozo Shalom came into the best possible country, because we also embrace the values of giving. We embrace the value of taking care of our community. And so I feel that there has been a lot of similarities, but what Agahozo Shalom brought in a very practical way, the way a young person is transformed. We have 4 years, and these young people are transformed in more than one way. And they grow in a way that they say they come from a place of brokenness to a place of wholeness. And that's something that can help to benefit our country in better ways.
To me, one of the strongest pieces in the Haggadah is the idea that it's as though you yourself went out of Egypt, right? That what has happened to our people, you have to act as though it has happened to you. You have to have that memory too. And because my grandma always said to me, you don't just remember for the Jews, you remember for everyone. I think we have that responsibility to remember what has happened to non-Jews too, and to know that it's our responsibility to both keep those memories alive and to think about healing from them. I think that the Jewish motivation of Zachor, of remembering, doesn't just mean our history. It means the pain of others. And I think when you see the village and you see this Israeli or Jewish idea being enlivened in another space, finding commonality in another space and learning in another space, in another community, I think that's incredibly Jewish. That it's, you welcome the stranger, right? It is not just about Jews. It has to be about others as well. I think the Youth Village's Derech Eretz is to give Rwanda's most vulnerable kids the experience of love and security and every opportunity that they would have had in a healed family.
As we know, Jewish people are based all over the world, including in the middle of the Eastern Cape. Today, Galit Cohen tells us all about the work and various projects that the organization Ripples for Change does for the local communities.
I grew up in Israel. I grew up in Haifa. So being Jewish is a strong part of my identity. I'm not an observant Jew, but I feel that I fulfill a lot of my Jewish social duties, if I can say so. I came to South Africa in 2002 to volunteer in Africa Tikkun. I volunteered in Africa Tikkun for 6 months. And then they offered me a position, and I stayed with them for nearly 6 years. I went back home, I did my master's degree in disaster management, but all the time I had the itch to come back to South Africa. I felt connected to this country. And then I got headhunted by another organization called Donald Woods Foundation, and they brought me to the Eastern Cape. And I am really happy. I love the Eastern Cape. It is just such a diamond in the rough. It's beautiful here. Ripples for Change is an organization that I started in 2013 to strengthen rural communities. When I worked in the townships in Alexandra, Orange Farm, Diepsloot, and in the townships in Cape Town, I thought all the time that people want to live in the townships because this is where the work is, where the jobs opportunities are. And I thought that this is where they want to be. But only later I realized that actually people prefer to live here in their home place, in the rural areas, without running water, without electricity, because this is where they come from, if they had job opportunities here. And that kind of like lit up an idea for me that we need, if we strengthen the rural communities, this forced migration to the townships will change, will maybe slow down. And this is what Ripples for Change is trying to do. In 2013, when I started Ripples for Change, the first people I contacted were the chiefs, the local chiefs, working under Contralesa. Contralesa is the Congress of Traditional Leaders, and I've been working with the Buffalo City Municipality branch. The chiefs are very strong in the rural communities. They are the ones who have the land. So if I need any land for any project, they'll be happy to allocate land for Ripples for Change. And they've been instrumental in the success of Ripples for Change. I'm very proud of this partnership.
Building of communities, of course, is so important because our existence as traditional leaders is for working for the betterment of our people, especially those who are living in rural areas. Remember, we are talking about the resource-poor people who have been unfortunately, disadvantaged, for a long time. And people who had no chance actually not to capacitate themselves because of lack of resources. We've
been working with early child development all this time. Early child development, we supported 102 ECD centers. We've supported them with a lot of items and know-how. At the same time, we also partnered with another organization called Lifetime Legacy, and they support high school and career development and linking them to the universities and helping them with the grants and the scholarships and supporting them from the time they need to select subjects all the way to the master's degree, PhD they even have. It's managed by one woman named Pumla Sturman, and we've been working together. And when we understood the concept of cradle to career from Africa Tikkun, it all clicked. And since 2021, we partnered with Africa Tikkun to implement Cradle to Career in our communities. Another project is we've been working with STEM Power. STEM Power is an organization American-based. They've been supporting every possible African country, building STEM centers, STEM as science, technology, engineering, and math. And they bring high technology to universities everywhere in Africa to improve the level of STEM and to improve, to stimulate more careers in STEMs around Africa. So they have, I think that by the end of this year, there will be 70 centers around Africa. One of the conditions is to do outreach. So the university needs to invite high school kids from townships to the STEM center, so they will learn what is a STEM center, what is the technology, what is a 3D printer, what can be done, and to hoping that they will choose careers in STEM.
Through our partnership with Ripples for Change, we have managed to secure small funding from Buffalo City Development Agency to assist farmers in our areas. In the last season, we have covered about 800 families, supplying them with seedlings, with manure, to actually promote food security, to plant their backyard gardens. And we have done that successfully.
When I was a child, I remember that my dad asked me to pass the newspaper. He was sitting on the sofa and the newspaper was on the table, dining room table. So I took the newspaper and I threw it towards him. And then he stood up and he gave it to me and he said, "Give it to me. If you want to give with all your heart." That was my first lesson of giving. And everybody can do a little bit. The philosophy of Ripples for Change is that we all ripples creating a wave of change. I believe that the little bit that you can contribute, not only money-wise, but also the time that you can contribute towards us, anything that you can do, you will make a huge difference here.
Khalid, to us, is a star. She has been so helpful in a number of ways. She's an outgoing person, very handy, and she's willing to go an extra mile, in assisting, our people. If we can get people like this, we can make a difference in this country.
My Derech Eretz is to give with all your heart. If you give shoes, don't just throw it in a bag. Make sure that they shine. Make sure that the laces are right. If you want to give as if you are the recipient. That is my Derech Eretz.
Well, we've come to the end of the show for this week's episode of Derech Eretz. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Derech Eretz Connect. From me, Lauren Jaffe, and the Derech Eretz team, have a beautiful week.